Ro Clark on the mic, yes, I'm doing what I do, representing for the ladies, but he's speaking for the goons. Back and forth with the banter. You got questions, we got answers. Every week we bringing you the entertainment and the news. Welcome to our podcast for the ladies and the goons. Ladies, goons, ladies, goons, ladies, goons, ladies, goons. Hi, this is Ro.
And this is Buck.
And welcome to episode 2 of the Ladies and Goons Podcast. All right, well, today we're going to get started. First thing I wanted to bring out was this new flu-rona nonsense that's going around. I think it started in California. What do you think about that?
It sounds like the flu.
Yeah, I thought the coronavirus was basically a flu, kind of, anyway. So that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I heard they have like the same kind of symptoms,
So I just thought I'd throw it out there, but it just sounds fake.
Scientists on here one day or something.
We should. I know a couple scientists and some doctors. We can get some people to come through and talk a little bit. All right, well, that was just being thrown out there. The second topic, which we're going to spend most of our time talking today, is about toxic masculinity versus toxic femininity. Is that really a thing? And kind of what that means. So I figure we would start off with giving our opinions on what masculinity and femininity is. Buck?
Masculinity and femininity, just like really rough. I really don't know that there is a masculinity or femininity at this point.
I kind of agree with that. I think it feels like masculinity and femininity are learned, and when you're young, you're just kind of taught certain things, and either you gravitate towards it or you reject that and decide to do your own thing. But I don't know, male and female might be a different topic for me, but masculinity and femininity just sounds like something that was some part of it a little made up.
That's exactly where the words come from, like male, masculinity. So if I was going to attribute any actions to masculinity, they would be things that are caused by the dominance of testosterone. And femininity to me would have to be categorized as any things that are caused by the dominance of estrogen. Because those hormones do have an impact on the way you function and think and your body operates.
That makes sense. And when I was doing some research just on the topic, I found that it was like the 1400s when the term masculinity and femininity actually came to be. So it's not something that was around from the beginning of time. It's just something that was put together and kind of like charted. Speaking of charts, I did find a chart when I was researching this topic.
I thought you was going to say I was in the Billboard 100.
Yeah, no. But so I found this chart, and it was pretty interesting. I thought it would be a good talking point because there's no right or wrong, and it's not to say that this chart is correct, but we want to put it together and kind of see what you think, Buck. I'm going to give my opinion as well, and you all can write in and let us know what you think. So it started off by saying true masculinity is not the complete opposite of feminine, but it is very different. So the chart that they have shows masculine and feminine personality traits on a spectrum. So as a man, it says that you want to showcase your positive masculine traits and don't want the negative masculine traits. Having positive feminine traits is neutral or can be a bonus if you're a man. But having negative feminine traits is 3 times negative for a man. And then it flips it. It's the exact same thing for females. You want the positive female traits. You do not want the negative female traits. You will benefit from having some of the positive masculine traits, but then 3 times negative if you had the negative masculine traits as a female. So that was kind of confusing a little bit. I know I'm looking at the chart, so it's a little easier for me. But,
I was impressed that you actually got that out like that.
I'm looking at it. I was trying. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this right. So I figure what I'll do is kind of read off what it says for positive masculine and then negative masculine traits, and then jump over to the positive feminine and negative feminine traits. And I can already see on this list that I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm going to try to be very open-minded about it, because a lot of times I read things and then my own emotions get involved, and I'm like, well, I'm a female, so this I don't like, and I don't think this is right. So I'm going to try to just take that away and be very objective and see what we get from this. So I'll start with the positive masculine traits. So we have authoritative, certain, debonair, self-assured, courageous, goal-oriented, protective, physical, black and white, easygoing, ambitious, funny, active, action-oriented, and spatial reasoning.
Hello, so women are not funny?
No, well, it's a positive trait. So if you remember, since it's in a positive masculine trait, it is something that is beneficial if a female does portray. So everything I just said, if you are on the feminine side and you have all the positive female traits, this would be a bonus to have all of these, which are the masculine traits. So that's a bonus. Now, if you, as a female, possess anything that's on the negative masculine side, then that would be 3 times bad for you. So I don't necessarily, I think those, the strengths that we just read are great. And I agree with a lot of them. I don't think, it's a positive thing, so I'm not going to
Hold on,
go
so
into
what
it.
if a woman possesses the positive strengths that are masculine attributed?
Mm-hmm.
Those are 3 times negative as well?
No.
Or those are good?
The positive is good. So if
okay.
you have that, it's good. You just don't want, it's actually considered neutral, or it can be a bonus. So it doesn't sway you either way, or it's actually better for you to portray those. So that was the masculine, the positive. So for men, that list would be positive. For women, it would either be neutral or it would be a bonus to possess these things. All right. Then I go to the negative side, which is actually, those were listed as strengths under masculine. The negative side is listed under vices. But under the feminine side, it lists them as positives are virtues and the negatives are weaknesses. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit different. So we got vices and virtues depending on who you're talking about. All right. So the vices, so the negative aspect for masculine side is aggressive, boastful, dominant, vain, brazen, egotistical, violent, act without thinking, clumsy, overly logical, indifferent, combative, defiant, argumentative, and compulsive. That sounds like, it's funny because that list seems to me like in my other job and dealing with athletes at times, a lot of the male athletic teams possess a lot of these traits, and they're rewarded as positive, not negative traits.
Indifferent, though. Why would indifferent be a vice?
Indifferent. Well, maybe because you're not decisive in one way or another.
Maybe.
That would be the only thing that I could really think of. Or maybe you don't care, but not caring. I don't know. That's the only thing I could think of where it's like you're not being a leader. You're not, let's see, any things that were on the other side. Being
like
goal-oriented.
Objectivity is not listed at all. And when I hear the word indifferent, that's what comes to me at first, like neutral.
Yeah. And I guess that's different from easygoing. Well, you know what? Indifferent seems to, that black and white, seeing things in black and white, like making a decision, that's on a strength. So maybe that's where the indifference is.
Okay.
That could be if I'm looking at this list. Now, mind you, we did say that this list is just a list. It doesn't mean it's a be all and end all. It's just a talking point for us. But if women possess any of these things in the vice section for the masculine side, it would be considered 3 times negative. And I know for a fact, most of the things that are listed here, working in corporate America and being in a male-dominated society, if you possess many of these things, you're considered, I mean, you're almost blackballed out. It's just like, or you're considered a bitch, or you're considered, there's a lot of different things that, if I could see where it says 3 times negative, because even though some of these things would be considered negative for the masculine trait, we do have certain areas where we celebrate men who actually have these traits. But women, it's hardly celebrated. And if it is, there's like a fight. So it's a huge fight. So I could see where that's 3 times.
Argumentative.
What do you think about that?
I think that is a vice regardless.
True, I agree. It is definitely a vice. And then, but an argumentative female would be negative, 3 times negative.
Yeah, but there has to be some kind of something in here that shows that you know how to debate. Debate is not necessarily argumentative. Like, I've been called argumentative a few times, but just because I have a specific point that I know how to defend and I feel is right. Correct.
And I think you're 100% right with that. And I think that falls under like self-assured, which is positive. Let's see, protective, certain. So, you know, there's a lot of things that when you pull the good parts out of that, is probably where they're going with. But just argumentative, to me, if you take it on face value, is just wanting to argue and wanting to do the opposite. I do that sometimes. I think that's one of my negative traits, which would be a 3 times negative trait hit on me. But sometimes an argumentative person would, you create these situations that are not even situations, and then you take it and run with it. And you're so sure that any little thing that hits on there, you take it, you run with it, you argue, and the other person's wrong. So I think that's part of the argumentative portion.
This clumsy thing seems like a little toxic as well. The fact that women, is 3 times worse for a woman to be clumsy. That seems to me that it implies that women are like stealthy like all the time and just so smooth.
Absolutely.
And are supposed to be elegant at all times.
Absolutely.
That seems like a little bit of toxicity.
It does, because we're going over to the other side anyway, but if you look at the virtues, one of them for women is graceful. So that is your virtue. If a man is graceful, then it's just neutral, or it could be good. It could be graceful and whatever.
So it's supposed to be neutral? What?
So if a man is graceful, it's actually just neutral. It's not bothering them. It's not swinging them either way. Or it could be a bonus. Like, say people look at it and say, oh my gosh, look at how he moves and he speaks and he's, or like Obama, or like someone who you kind of, you when you see them, there's an aura about
Obama
them that's
was
really,
graceful?
He was. He was graceful, and he had that swag, and he moved, and he, a lot of times, it depends on how you define grace. So no, he's not a ballerina per se, but, to be someone, or a ballet dancer, I should say, because there are male ballet dancers as well who are very graceful, and
he knew how to tiptoe.
If that, I mean, that it could be, you could view it that way. But what it's saying here is that's either neutral or it could be a plus, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So on the feminine virtuous side, the pluses, we have tactful, okay with the unknown, sensitive, humble, thoughtful, compassionate, social, sympathetic, graceful, outgoing, attentive, caring, empathetic, careful, and verbally skilled. What do you think about that?
What's the difference between careful and caring?
Careful is being, it's kind of like being aware. It's, kind of being aware of what's going on and making your decisions based on that, and making sure that you're taking care of what's going on. And then caring has to do with other people. So careful may have to do with you more, and caring with other people. Like I can be careful in taking care of my child, but I can be caring when dealing with my child. Just a difference, slight difference. That's what I think. I thought it was funny that it said verbally skilled. Which it falls under either neutral for men or a positive. So yes, like, I mean, if men are verbally skilled, they probably can get anything they want. That's really like a bonus for them. For women, you have to be able to articulate what it is that you want in a good way. Sometimes that comes off as being sneaky or being manipulative, but other times it's just being able to communicate, because you're not listened to. A lot of the times women are not listened to, or just the tone of the voices, and being in environments where you need to be able to sound like you know what you're talking about to get things done. So I see that. Compassionate, thoughtful, humble, sensitive, all of these are things that I try to possess myself, but I think they're very beneficial for masculine energies to possess as well.
I did have a problem with the okay to the unknown thing, but now thinking about it, okay with the unknown is probably more like acceptance.
Yeah. I could see that.
I could get with that.
I could see that. Okay with the unknown, not just being like whatever, and it doesn't mean that you're just like, I don't want to know anything. But when you get to a point where there's nothing else, like things are out of your control, and you just can't do anything about it necessarily, that you can be okay and know that things are not always completed and not always answered, and we're constantly working towards a new thing and bettering. But I assume that's what it was. On the flip side, with weaknesses, so this is bad for females and 3 times as bad for males. So we have shy or timid, spacey or flaky, drama queen, insecure, gossiping, hysterical, passive, think without acting, fragile, illogical, nosy, obsessive, frightened, indecisive, and complaining. I mean, this sounds like obviously it's bad all around for everyone, because it's 3 times as bad for males and it's bad for females. It's a really bad list. Maybe if I were to start trying to fix things about myself, I would probably start with this list.
But what makes these things 3 times worse for the opposite sex? That's like hinting at some kind of, like, there's a starting point already. Like, if it's 3 times worse, that means that they're supposed to have whatever the opposite is.
True.
So it's implying something from making it 3 times worse.
True, which is where we get the toxic masculinity and toxic femininity that is taught to many of us.
But are these things are these things a result of the hormone balance?
Some of that is a possibility. And some people are born with their hormones, what we would consider. Now, if I would say out of balance, is that correct as well? We're using a base.
Definitely.
We're using a base to say this is what something should be.
Definitely.
So I tend to swing that way, but at the same time, I stop myself sometimes, because I think of what I use as a base judgment for most of the things that I do now. And it's been pointed out to me a few times that a lot of the base things, especially in the United States, come from a white male perspective of what something should be. And then we broaden out from there, and we branch out and say, this is right, wrong, whatever.
Well,
so
some things come from actual science, like aggression. True. Testosterone causes aggression. Like, I just recently learned that female hyenas are loaded with testosterone, so they are more aggressive. So that shows me testosterone makes you aggressive.
True.
And if males generally have more testosterone than women, then it would lead me to believe that they would be more aggressive. And that is a vice for men.
Mm-hmm. And 3 times as bad for females.
Right. But that also goes with authoritative. You have to be aggressive to be authoritative. But I guess aggression would be just overly aggressive.
Yeah. Because if you are authoritative but graceful and verbally skilled, which is the pluses from the feminine side, you can command respect from people, and they're like, okay, I will.
Well, debonair is the equivalent of graceful, isn't it?
Somewhat.
Man.
Yeah, somewhat. It doesn't necessarily mean that could be in how they present themselves and speak, but not necessarily movements, but it could be as well. So I think those kind of cross over. Cuz I would normally that's the word I would use instead of graceful. I would think certain males may feel like I'm taking a shot at them, calling them graceful as opposed to debonair. Or when people say, "Oh my gosh, you're so pretty," and they're like, "No, handsome." And especially as kids don't know, they're like, pretty, that's the good thing, so let me use that. And I've seen that a lot too. So I take caution in some of these words. We're using this for understanding, but also understanding that not everyone will agree with what's being stated. That it's crazy. I won't say crazy, but it's odd to me when I read the feminine weakness list. And please do not attack me. I am in no way, shape, or form homophobic. I'm just going to point out that a lot of the gay friends that I have exhibit a lot of gay male friends that identify as male, but they're gay. They exhibit a lot of the weaknesses that are 3 times bad if you are feminine, such as and these are my personal friends, so I'm not
masculine.
putting
3 times bad if you're masculine.
True, 3 times bad if you're masculine, just bad if you're feminine, which is what they are exhibiting. And so some of the things, personal friends, not everyone. So gossiping, drama queen, hysterical, which to me, a lot of these things. So being who you are and trying to. If I were a male that identified with more feminine traits, this list is kind of cool to see. Like, those might be the things that I identify with, and I'm like, oh, this is good, or this is what I want to be. Because when you're taking on this identity of who you feel you are and what you're using to help you kind of figure that out, what is it that you're exhibiting? So it was just something that I noticed there. Neither here nor there, but it's just, and also not only that, the things that are portrayed when you're watching TV and when you're looking in the media, those are the traits that are magnified and thrown out there. A lot of times, I was having a conversation with a friend a few weeks ago, and the conversation came up about gay men and whether or not they were impersonating Black females, which I'm not putting I'm not saying neither here nor there, but when that did happen, even when we had the conversation, those what you were impersonating, or what they pointed out specifically being impersonating,
toxic Black female,
would be on that weakness list, but that's what was being portrayed. And like, oh my gosh, like a lot of the times people are like, oh, I love this person, they're so great, and the things that they love about them fall under that feminine weakness list.
Was it a Black person that said that?
No, it wasn't.
That seems a little racist when you take that into context.
It could be viewed as that. I've heard it outside of that as well, but this particular conversation, no, it wasn't a Black person.
Because they automatically attributed these toxic female traits to Black women. True.
This is true. And in being in the conversation, I didn't necessarily disagree with specifically what was pointed out, and being a Black female myself, it feels weird because I'm like, I don't necessarily exhibit the same things that are listed, but I know people that I'm like, yep, that's such and such, or that's this person. So, but like I said, again, what we see in the media and what we see on TV and what is portrayed when we're watching, RuPaul's Drag Race and things like when you're watching things, there's certain personality traits that are exaggerated, and they seem to fall under that category. So it's just an observation.
Yeah. That's a good one.
All right. So we're going to move into, not move necessarily, but as I mentioned before, I agree to a certain extent to many of the points, but that also has to do a lot with upbringing and culture, and kind of there are certain cultures where maybe the culture itself is not as masculine, and may appear, or the traits are more feminine dominated.
You might have to put quote unquote in there when you say masculine and feminine, just to make it a little more safe.
This is true, quote unquote, not necessarily what I believe, or Buck believes, or the Ladies and Goons podcast believes, but but yeah, there's a lot of things like your upbringing, your culture. Sometimes there's certain cultures. I'm Jamaican, so in my culture, it is a male-dominated culture, and you are raised. I will say I was raised in a certain way, and although that changed as I got older, and even with my parents, everything kind of settled. We moved to America, so that could be part of what changed some of that thought process. But your culture and the way you are raised will kind of sway what you feel on this topic as well. And then,
who established the culture for America?
The culture for America would be established by the British. In my opinion, that's where certain parts of the culture that we have today, the
overall culture
in America today. So I'm not speaking of the Native American culture, which is completely different than the culture that most of the United States follows today.
Indigenous people.
Indigenous means, that's from anywhere. So if I say indigenous to the United States, that's different than indigenous people of Mexico or anywhere else. So indigenous is, of course, I'm using it interchangeably, but I'm saying Native Americans just because that this is where I'm speaking of, the United States.
Native American becomes a complex term if the indigenous people never refer to this land as America.
True. This is true. But do they also use the word indigenous? I'm not sure. And since I don't necessarily speak the language, I'm just trying to communicate in a way that I think, and you might be right, that I think others will understand kind of where I'm coming from. But I do preface that with, I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
I'm not trying to get canceled. It's only the second podcast.
Listen, I'm not trying to be disrespectful is what I'm saying. One last question I have to this whole masculine, feminine, and all of it, and how it was laid out and all of that on the chart that we saw. So this question is for you, Buck. Do you think that money throws a monkey wrench into this whole thing?
Money throws a monkey wrench into everything.
True.
So my answer would be yes.
I agree as well. What aspect of it do you think, though?
Money allows things that are not necessarily acceptable to be accepted.
True.
Things that are not necessarily beneficial to be accepted.
True. This is true.
Money is just like the biggest monkey wrench.
It's true.
You take the K out of it. The money wrench.
Oh, look at him creating stuff. Oh, the money wrench. Yes. Actually, in an upcoming show, we're going to talk about all these little idioms and sayings and kind of the origin of those things, because I say a lot of them and then I've had to stop myself from saying it. Like throwing a monkey wrench, what does that really mean? I don't know. I know what the saying means, but it probably is something that's not so good, because a lot of the sayings that I normally say or I have in the past, I've had to stop doing that. And so knowing where those things come from is very important. So I think we should definitely speak about those. We'll research some of them, talk about the origins, and maybe get you to be a little bit more enlightened on these sayings that I think we all kind of throw around. Obviously, we all understand them because the whole point of communication is to be understood. And so if we say these things to be a concise way of labeling something, then that means we all kind of understand what it means.
In American culture. And
maybe bleeds over into, now with the internet, culture is culture. Like everybody's kind of just mixing and merging and like becoming this one thing. And sadly enough, a lot of the negative things catch on a lot faster than the positive and uplifting things. So anyway, so that was our brief talk on masculine and feminine traits. I think I think putting labels on people and forcing people to be a certain way from birth, some things are done to try to be helpful and give insight and give guidance. But then when it oversteps that boundary and we're making people feel bad about certain things, I don't know, that's where I start to stop and question, like, where did these things come from? If there were a situation where the masculine trait had been cut out for whatever reason, meaning the head of household, the father is gone or the mother is gone, or you're somewhere and which could possibly happen for us to be somewhere and need to be able to fend for yourself, it's not a good idea to have such far left and far right of what these things are and who can do what, because then we're lacking. I remember growing up and seeing men that could not cook their own food, not much the case now, but couldn't cook their own food, wouldn't even put on clothes if it weren't laid out for them, things like that. And that's not good or healthy. And on the flip side, have females that can't take care of themselves, can't protect themselves when no one else is around, can't be aware and see what's happening, can't change their tire if they need to when you're stuck on the side of the road and not having to rely on someone else to do so. So I think it would be very beneficial for us to kind of mix and mingle some of these traits and try to be the best self that we can be. Any closing remarks on the masculine feminine from you?
Masculine feminine, at this point, I would just be happy if we could just settle on like male, female, and agree on something, because there has to be an end to deception. I'm not a fan of deception, and people acting a certain way doesn't necessarily change who you are. And that could be perceived as a positive statement or a negative statement if you dig deep enough into it. Yeah,
that's true. All right, so that concludes our masculine and feminine talk for today. I did want to pass over to Buck, the president, for him to talk about some of the podcasts that he likes and pay homage to those people who kind of inspired him to do this on his own as well. I will admit,
homage.
I will admit that I don't listen to many podcasts, and any podcast that I was introduced to was through Buck the President. So I'm going to leave this section entirely up to him, but I will guarantee that I will start listening to some new podcasts. I do have a list of podcasts in 2022 that I need to start listening to, and I will do so, and I'll kind of report back on what I'm finding and maybe give you all some tips and tricks as well. But go ahead, Buck.
Well, I think, first of all, what opened me up to accepting podcasts is growing up with a grandmother who listened to talk radio. She listened to no music stations. She listened to exclusively talk radio, and talk radio was always on in the house. So when podcasts came around, I first discovered Combat Jack. The Combat Jack podcast, man, I used to listen to that like every day going to work. I caught on to it late, so I could listen every day, catching up to the old episodes. Rest in peace, Combat Jack. Then there's Joe Budden podcast. Joe Budden. I appreciate that podcast. It gives me some representation. It seems like black men, and at least I'm going to say our age group in general, is missed as far as representation all over the place. And that's a good one.
I agree. I like that one. He got me hooked on that. I don't listen to it as much as he does, but it's entertaining.
Yeah, they just had their 500th episode. Salute.
Woo! We're at number 2, so we got to catch up.
Then there's, of course, Noriega, the Drink Champs. Noriega, DJ EFN, Drink Champs.
Drink
podcast.
Champs. Love that.
Queens. Yeah, I respect that.
And Miami.
Yeah. I listen to those continuously. And then there's Killer Priest podcast.
Yes.
Shout out to Killer Priest.
Amazing.
And those are just a couple favorites of mine.
Yeah, that's on the podcast side. And Killer Priest, it's on YouTube as well, so they go live and you can see, watch, and get a lot of insight. Also, not really a podcast, but shorter that Buck definitely watches a lot is Russell Brand.
Oh yeah, Russell Brand.
Yeah,
Russell Brand. I just got on to Russell Brand. He's a deep thinker. I appreciate his thoughts.
I appreciate it too because they're in short snippets. So it goes really fast, but you can like take down some notes and be like, okay, and think about certain things and come back to it. So sometimes with a podcast being very long, there's a lot coming at you and you can forget some of it. But his being in those short snippets with just a powerful message within each one, it's pretty cool.
That's the YouTube, but he does have the long podcast where he does like an hour and some change on Luminary.
Oh wow, I haven't checked that out.
I shouldn't even plug Luminary because we're not getting paid.
Well, I haven't checked that out, but I will. I think that's cool. Is that it for our podcast? Like different podcasts that we want to shout out? All right, well, we're going to move into our section on entertainment news. We're going to fly through it quickly.
Oh, my man, hold up. My man's Doggy Diamond.
Oh,
Doggy Diamond been doing it for a while, but I never used to watch his podcast. Doggy Diamond, Kareem Johnson, Blizz Johnson, yeah. I listen to them now, too. They've helped me with some good information.
Cool. What about Earn Your Leisure? Do you watch that one?
Earn Your Leisure, I appreciate the idea, but I don't really watch it that much.
Okay. I think it's a little bit over my head sometimes, but when they have certain guests that I can relate to a little bit, I'm not really good with numbers. That's why I'm an artist. But I need to get into that. So maybe I'll start in small chunks because dealing with money normally would be one thing, but now we're talking about virtual things, NFTs and coins, and there's a lot. It's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot more than.
Well, that makes me feel like I should listen to it more now.
Yeah, there's a lot more than 30, 40 years ago, what our parents had to think about. There was none of this. And so it opens up the door for more wealth and for more equity, which is really cool amongst others. However, it's a lot and you have to think pretty quickly and fast. So, but anyway, all right. So that's it for those podcasts we were talking about and shouting out. We're going to go into some entertainment news real quick. So Love and Hip Hop Hollywood cast member Moniece Slaughter is expecting her second child, which is not by Little Fizz. What do you think about that?
I don't even give a fuck. This shit right there.
You don't care. Well, congratulations. She seems happy.
Yeah.
She is not letting anyone know who the father is, but she did say it is not Little Fizz of B2K, which she had her first child with. Secondly, along the same lines, Ashley Graham just welcomed twin boys into her growing family. So her and her husband welcomed
Who's Ashley
twin
Graham,
boys.
the plus size model?
Yes.
I know her.
Yes. So
Well, I don't know her, but I know
she just had twins, and so beautiful. She has some beautiful maternity pictures as well. Moving on, Sidney Poitier dies at 94. R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier, I believe he was the first black man to win leading actor.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I think so.
He was also the first black man to smack the shit out of a white person on television or on a big screen.
On what?
On the Heat of the Night.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Monumental moment.
Good gracious.
Rest in peace, definitely. Sidney
Rest
Poitier.
in peace. It's just been, it feels like, I mean, it was Betty White, it was John Madden, so many people.
Max Julian passed away too, man. The Mac.
Man, it's so sad. But Buck was saying to me, I mentioned this when I was talking about Sidney the other day, or I should say Mr. Poitier. I don't know him like that. I'm gonna give him his respect. When I was talking about him and the other day, and Buck did mention like, well, we're getting to that age where, you know, the people that we looked up to growing up are gonna be passing away, and even a lot of the people that are our same age will be passing away, and it's kind of sad, and especially with this coronavirus and not knowing what's going on, and health in general of the country, of the world, and eating habits, and a lot of different things. So it's kind of sad, but R.I.P. Sidney Poitier. Next, remember we spoke last podcast of one of the most anticipated movies of 2022 would be the sequel to Black Panther. And that has suffered a setback as one of its stars, Lupita Nyong'o's, tested positive for COVID. So this is going to slow down filming a bit, but hopefully she's okay and everything gets back on track.
Coronavirus.
It's getting real. Yeah, it's crazy, but hopefully she's you know, strong and young and fit and can fight it, and hopefully she's asymptomatic as well, because right now everyone, they're like, oh, you tested positive, and everyone's in a frenzy. But some people test positive and they never have any issues, complications, or anything like that.
A lot of people test positive.
Yeah, a lot of people, and it's like nothing going on. It's just like, oh, I tested and it says positive, so it's a big uproar. So hopefully she's one of those people that's not having any symptoms and just was testing as she films normally, and that's what happened. The next thing I'm going to talk about, so Gucci Mane gifted his wife, Keisha Kaur, $1 million for her 37th birthday. And this seems to have become a trend. I don't know how we feel about this, or if we should have a feeling at all. But I remember when I was younger, you got money when people didn't have the time or energy to think of a gift.
Oh, shit.
That was one time. It'd be like, okay, we're just going to give it to you. We don't have the energy. Just give it. Sometimes you got money when people didn't, they just didn't know what to give you, and they wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to get what you really wanted. So they'll hand it to you and say, get whatever you want. And I also remember Cardi B gifted her husband Offset $2 million recently for his birthday. And Michael B. Jordan.
Does that go into like a different, like, can you file that under something else in your taxes if you give it as a gift?
I don't know.
The recipient, I believe, can definitely file it.
I don't know. I don't know much about taxes. I gotta get up on that. My person that did my taxes, my father, rest in peace. He's no longer here, so I gotta figure that out. But that's a good question because it's income. It's considered income. So, yeah. I mean, they're married anyway, so there's just switching back and forth. I'm sure they have separate accounts for certain things, but that's just switching back and forth. And then we have Michael B. Jordan gifted Lori Harvey stock in Hermes. She buys a lot of Hermes. That makes sense, and that sounds like a pretty sensible gift. How do you think about what do you think about those?
It sounds pretty good. I mean, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm already a millionaire and someone gives me $1 million, like, so what would be the money amount? If someone is a billionaire and they gave you like $20 for your birthday, you should still be, I guess, appreciative. But the thought pattern behind that would be the equivalent of maybe a quarter of a penny that I would give someone. But it's also, I mean, I don't think some of these people, even with the millions that they gave other gifts and stuff as well. They're on a different level completely. I really like that Michael B. Jordan gifted stock, Hermes stock to Lori Harvey. I think that's really cool. And I think thinking about legacy and thinking about the future and money making money for you and you not having to do anything about that, especially if it's something that you believe in and that you support. That sounds like a really good one. I think Michael
B. Jordan and Lori Harvey have enough money and clout to start their own Hermes, and I'll be down to support that myself. But
they could if that's what they wanted. Lori Harvey actually has her own clothing brand that she started, and she's doing that. Michael B. Jordan, I know, had I believe it was a tequila or something, but he had some legal problems with that because of the name. So a little bit. Juve is what he was naming it, and so a lot of Trinidadians got upset because of the name, whatever. So he's rebranding right now. But you're right. If it's something that they truly love, so not just to be like, oh, I'm starting this thing, which is a high end, like someone like Kanye who loves fashion and couture and all of that. That it makes perfect sense. All right. I just spoke about Kanye. Let's go into that. So we have Ye. Let me call him Ye and not say Kanye. I'm sorry. Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, is set to headline Coachella, replacing Travis Scott, who was removed due to the Astroworld tragedy that happened. How do you feel about that? Him being replaced?
I knew Travis Scott was going to be replaced. He's trying to get back in the grind with like Loud. I heard Rolling Loud is trying to like roll him out.
Yeah. But
Travis Scott, he got caught up, unfortunately. That was an unfortunate tragedy with the Astroworld thing.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, and rest in peace to the people who lost their lives. And I understand that it was really bad. But in this culture, this new cancel culture that we have, not allowing, people to state, their purpose and state what they mean and apologize when things happen, even when it's not necessarily you who did it. And so there's a lot of controversy whether or not, he's responsible. And I think we're less forgiving, especially because the person is famous and rich. People who are not famous or rich don't really have much empathy towards people who are, because they're like, your life is perfect, whatever. But I think that's crazy. And then to be replaced by Ye, I guess keeping it in the family-ish, a little bit. Oh, no.
But who? And I had to look up who owns Coachella, and that's what? How you pronounce that?
It says Anschutz, looks like.
Through AEG Live?
Mm-hmm. It owns Coachella Valley Music, yep. So
I'm tired of these same names. Hermes, Coachella, all of that. I'm ready for some new names and some new people to be running the cultural things that we appreciate.
Yeah, it says American billionaire businessman who owns and controls companies in a variety of industries.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's super rich. Yeah. All right, and more Ye news. He is dating.
I'm in it for the culture.
He's dating Julia Fox. Whether it's serious or not, she seems to think it is. And he gifted her with an abundance of clothes, wardrobe, and all kinds of stuff, and took her out, and it was great, and she's really happy. So I wish the best for him in everything that he does. I think he's misunderstood a lot, and we spend a lot of time dogging him and others and not just allowing people to be. So
yeah, at this point, I don't think I could hate him at this point. He's done too much. And
yeah, you see, I mean, we'll just leave it at that. So congrats if it's something major.
Hey, holla at me.
She thinks that it's something major. She was posting on Insta, on social. She's really excited of where this is going, she says. So, hey. Joey Chavez set the record straight about being spotted kissing Diddy despite him reportedly dating Young Miami of City Girls.
Who the fuck is Joey Chavez?
I did. She's another Instagram girl. I'm so sorry that I'm calling her that. I'm not gonna say Instagram girl. That's where I know of her from. And I don't know. There's not much to that. I did see Diddy kissing her, and I thought, well, that's weird. I thought he was dating Young Miami. And then, so now the fact that she had to set the record straight, I'll be honest, I didn't click. I didn't want to be clickbait. I didn't click to see what she was saying, but it appears that he is still with Young Miami. So, all right. More Diddy news, though. Jermaine Dupri states that Diddy cannot battle him in a versus because he no longer speaks with many of the artists that he worked with. What do you think about that?
Jermaine Dupri is bugging. Diddy got too many tracks for Jermaine Dupri, I feel.
And technically, the artists don't have to be there for him to play the music that he created with them. You know that because
you know who getting them checks.
So they don't really have to be there. I mean, if you're doing it, if Jermaine Dupri then brings out all the people that he's worked with and they did that battle, it would probably skew it for the viewers. So maybe that's what he's talking about.
Oh, you know what? Money threw a monkey wrench into that argument.
Oh, man. And the last thing I have today, which just seemed kind of odd and left field, rapper Yo-Yo says that the love that her and Tupac shared far surpasses whatever fans believe he had with Jada. I was reading that. It popped up and I was like, what? And she was like, they truly loved each other all till the end. And but he also loved a lot of women, like she said. But she said that her relationship with him was...
Tupac got around, ain't it?
He did get around. All right. That's it for entertainment news for this week. I'm going to do something
special. That's the roast segment.
Shut up. We're going to do something special. I'm going to give a health tip for the week. I have my health tip written here, and then Buck is going to give you one Mr. Health Nut, one health tip, and try to think of something that will be something that people can actually take that step and start their journey, not like automatically do this 100-step thing. All right, so my tip it's actually like 3 things together, but try to drink a gallon of water daily, cut down on sugar and salt. If you can cut it out completely, great, you're better than me, but just trying to cut down on it. So that's my tip.
That sound like 3 tips.
Shush. It's 3 tips, but they're like together. I don't know.
See, my tip would be research what makes these foods that you may think are good for you, and what makes the foods that are bad for you, bad for you. When you start to understand that, you can help yourself to eat better, which is the main part in physical health. Everybody runs around talking as, oh, you got to die some way, and you're going to have to go eventually, I might as well. And they all talking that until they can't breathe or they land on a gurney and somebody's cracking their chest open. It's not a joke. Health is real and it's valuable. It's really all we have on this earth.
It's true. I agree. And I do not take it as seriously, or have not taken it as seriously as I should. It's very difficult. So I understand to all of you out there listening, it is very difficult to really stick to it and say, this is what I'm going to do, and not feel like emotionally and mentally not feel sad and depressed and like feel like you're missing out or you're losing out on something. But if it's important, it's something that you're going to just have to push through and do. And I'm still struggling with that. So like I said, agree with what Buck said. My tip is drink a gallon of water a day. Start there. And if you can go further, cut down on sugar and salt. It will make a difference. All right. I have some closing remarks that I think I'm going to use every time we close our podcast from this point forward. Okay. And I invite you to think of some as well. So my first thing is learn to love who you are while striving to be a better version of you each day. Don't base your actions solely on your emotions. Try to find principles to live by and base your action on those. Aim to be a good person and then stick to your word as closely as you can. You cannot please everyone, so just try to be good, and everything else will work itself out.
That's pretty good. I like that.
All right. Well, he'll think about something else later on, maybe, and maybe he'll adapt that, or, whatever. He flies by the seat of his pants, so that's fine.
We're going to find out where that one came from, too. Who's flying by the seat of their pants? What's that about?
We are going to figure that out. Actually, I'm going to say it right here. Next episode 3, will be us talking about those sayings, where they came from, and what they really mean, and debunking some rumors and, figuring out. I think a lot of them will have some weird racist undertones. So we're going to look into all of those, and we'll try to do as many as we can think of. And you can always write in. You can pledge. We have our pledging set up. You can pledge $1, $5, $10. They're really cool.
$1 million.
There's really cool gifts that you get depending on which level it is that you are pledging. So please think of doing that for us and supporting us here. And anything else for you here?
Nah, that was great.
All right. So we are going to say goodbye today. And we will see you. Bye, Ladies and Goons Podcast, episode 2. We out.